गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम्। वक्रतुण्ड महाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्ते नमः। व्यासम् अष्टनत्तारं शक्ते पौत्रमकल्मषं पराशरात्मजं वन्दे शुकदातं तपोनिधिं नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जहिमदीरयेत्। मूकं करोति वाचालं भङ्गं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं। नारायणपुरो व्यक्तदण्डमव्यक्तसंभो मण्डस्यान्तस्तु मे लोकः सुद्वीपा च मेदिने। पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणे स्वयं व्यासेन कृतितं पुराणमुनिनां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीमष्टादशाध्यायिनी अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवेद्वेषिणी। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। अवतीर्णश्च कालट्यां केदारीन्तरितश्च हसितस्फुरितपटिष्ठातायेदाच्यङ्गरो गुरुः। So we previously looked at the Karma Yoga, third Adhyaya, third chapter in Bhagavad Gita, in this Gita Śāstra. So now we start the new Adhyaya called Jnana-Karma-Sanyasa Yoga. So this Jnana-Karma-Sanyasa Yoga, before we start, is known, this Adhyaya, this chapter is known by various other different names as well. Okay, it is simply sometimes known as Jnana-Yoga, or sometimes it's known as Avatara Yoga, because Krishna explains about his avatara, or some explains that this is Jnana Avatara Yoga, some call it as Jnana Vibhaga Yoga, some call it as Karma Brahmarpana Yoga, or it's called as, because there is a Shloka Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, and then there is a Jnana Karma Yajna Vibhaga Yoga, and then some call it as Nirlepa Karma Yoga, and so on. But normal general use is called Jnana-Karma-Sanyasa Yoga. Again, the importance here is, I haven't seen this in Sri Shankaracharya Bhashya copy, or definitely not in Bhagavad Gita as it is in Mahabharata Shlokas as well. It doesn't call out the Adhyaya names. Okay, it just 18 Adhyayas, 18 chapters in Bhishma Parva in Mahabharata, right? So it's just a continuous narration of Sanjaya narrating all those things to Dhritarashtra, the events that took place. So he's narrating that. So as we look at it, and then since then this is Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan's Upadesha, and then we started calling those adhyayas with 18 different names. So whatever one thinks is right, it can be called, as long as the shlokas, the meanings, and the understanding remains the same. Okay, so here in the previous two yogas, in the yogas adhyayas, we looked at Sankhya Yoga, as we looked at that yoga of knowledge, Sankhya Yoga, Jnana Marga as the goal, and the Karma Yoga as the means. That was presented in the previous two adhyayas. And still, by implying their identity, due to the identity of the results of the end, by the means, and in accordance with the point that is Bhagavan is going to say later in 5th adhyaya, that he who sees Sankhya and Yoga as the one, and so on, he sees them as one. The Bhagavan, through the presentation, he starts here in this adhyaya, he starts explaining the genealogy, praises the yoga of karma, the yoga of action, Karma Yoga. He explains which is the means for the Jnana Yoga, right? Which is the end. So with the view of instructing about the various kinds of their qualities. So he starts that. So again, the yoga, Jnana Nishta, the yoga of devotion to the knowledge, was taught in the previous two adhyayas. That's what Acharya here says. So even though Karma Yoga, we called it previous one, is known as Karma Yoga, the ultimate Objective of that Karma Yoga is Jnana. Right? So that's what's said in the previous two yogas, and accompanied with renunciation and attainment by the means of Karma Yoga. That's what's said. That's what's said in the Pravritti and Nivritti Marga, which is the Vedic teaching regarding the life of activity, which is Pravritti, and retirement or renunciation, which is the Nivritti. That's what's said in there. So it is this, what this Jnana and Karma, whatever that yoga, the message that Bhagavan has given, this Vedic doctrine is given, is explained. That's what going to be explained throughout this Gita Śāstra. That's why thinking that therefore this Vedic doctrine needs to be concluded, Bhagavan praises it by relating its pedigree. So why it is so special, why it is so important, he explains that in this adhyaya. He starts by explaining that. So the first shloka goes like, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Ivam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manurikshvakave Abravit. Bhagavan said, I imparted this imperishable yoga to Vivasvan. Vivasvan taught this to Manu, and Manu transmitted this to, or gave this to, taught this to Ikshvaku. So that's the first shloka. So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, that means Sri Bhagavan, Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna said, Imam means this, Vivasvate means to Vivasvan, to Surya. Yogam means the science of yoga. Proktavan means taught. Aham means I. Avyayam means eternal. Vivasvan means Surya. Manave means Manu. That means the original progenitor of humankind. Praha means told. Manu means Manu. Ikshvakave means to Ikshvaku, the first king of solar dynasty. Surya Vamsha is the first king. Abravit means instructed. That's the Pratipadartha. Now, if we look at the Acharya's commentary, Bhashya on this Shloka, he explains that in the beginning of the creation, with the view of infusing vigor into Kshatriyas, who are the protectors of the world, I imparted this imperishable yoga presented in the preceding two chapters, in the Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga we looked at. That yoga, I imparted this imperishable yoga to Vivasvan. Vivasvan means Surya. Being endowed with this power of yoga, they would be able to protect Brahmanas. So Acharya here says, Samartha Bhavanti Brahma Parirakshitum. Okay, so they will be able to protect Brahma. So the Vedas, Brahmanas, they will be able to protect with those yogas. Those Kshatriyas will be able to protect. The protection of the world becomes ensured when Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas are protected. Brahma Kshatriya Paripalite Jagat Paripalayitu. Paripalayitum Malam. So when the protection of the world becomes ensured when Brahmanas and Kshatriyas are protected. So that's why Bhagavan explained this imperishable yoga, what we saw in the previous two chapters, to Vivasvan. And in this yoga, this yoga is imperishable because its result is undecaying. Because the result is moksha, right? The result of this yoga, the Karma Yoga, which results into Jnana Yoga, and that Jnana Yoga results into is moksha, right? That is imperishable. The moksha, the result called moksha, which is characterized by steadfastness in perfect illumination, and that does not decay. That's why it is Avyayam. And he, that is Vivasvan, Praha, that means he taught this Manave to Manu. And Manu Abravit, he transmitted this He told this to Ikshvaku, his own son, who was the first king in the Surya Vamsha. He is the first Surya Vamsha king. So that's what I explained here. Again, in the beginning of the creation, I, Bhagavan Vasudeva, the protector of the entire creation, imparted this excellently. Proktavan. See, Uktavan is fine, right? So I told this. Proktavan, pra is added because excellently. It's this told excellently by removing all the doubts and so on. This yogam, okay, I presented this yoga as presented in the previous 2 chapters and characterized by steadfastness in knowledge, which is achieved through steadfastness in karmas. That means characterized by Jnana-Yoga, which is achieved through Karma Yoga. I imparted this yoga to Vivaswan, Surya, the source of all the Kshatriya dynasties, for preserving the entire world under the Kshatriyas by giving them the vigor to the kings. And how this vigor is imparted by this is being again shown in the adjective avyayam, imperishable. It is imperishable because it originates from the imperishable Veda and has imperishable moksha as its result. So it is imperishable in the sense that this does not deviate in producing the result. Its result is unfailing. That's why it is imperishable, and thus it is possible to impart vigor through it, which is of this kind, and that's what is said here. And he, Vivaswan, the Surya Bhagavan, who is my disciple, Praha, taught this Manave. He taught this to Mano, to his own son Vaivasvata Manu. Okay, Surya's son Vaivasvata Manu, he taught him. So Vaivasvata Manu is Manu of current Manvantara. So again, Brahma's day is split into 14 Manus, right? So we are in the 7th. So Vaivasvata Manu is the Manvantara, current Manu. The first Manu is called Swayambhu Manu. He is Brahma's son himself. Okay, like this there are. So currently is Vaivasvata Manu. He is the son of Surya. So Surya taught this to Vaivasvata Manu, and that Manu transmitted this to his son Ikshvaku, who is the first king, who was the first king of this Surya Vamsha. Although this instruction of Bhagavan is common to each cycle of Manu, beginning with the Swayambhu Manu, still having in mind the present cycle of Vaivasvata Manu, the genealogy is said here is beginning with Surya. Okay, so even though the teachings of the Vedas were imparted from Bhagavan in every Manvantara, starting with Swayambhu Manu, the first Manu, here, because the current in this Dwapara Yuga, in this discussion where we are looking at it, Arjuna and Krishna's discussion, it was talked about in the relation to Vaivasvata Manu, the current Manu. Okay, and he got it from Vivaswan, and Vaivasvata Manu told this to Ikshvaku. That's how Bhagavan says. Now, just slightly deviating on the Manu itself, explaining Manu. So the Manu here mentioned is Vaivasvata Manu, not Swayambhu Manu. Okay, so Swayambhu Manu is Brahma Manasaputra. He is mind-born son of Brahma. And the Dharma Śāstra, for example, we hear a lot. Manusmriti is from Swayambhu Manu. Okay, and again, it is the teachings of the Manus, but it is consistent. Manu's teaching. That Manus, these days when we say Manusmriti, the seculars, the liberals, all those people, they say this is Manusmriti is wrong. Okay, that's what we hear today, and that is wrong. These days we hear a lot about Manusmriti with all the foolish headlines, right? People I'd seen last year, for example, during December period, where there was a day where people burn Manusmriti books, sadly. And they say that Brahmanas wrote these things for their own benefits, and it punishes Shudras, it creates caste hierarchy, it neglects women, and so many things. And these are all said by the two classes of people. One, those who have not studied Manusmriti, learnt it properly, or in fact, they have not studied any Smritis or any Shastras, or those who are actively involved in discrediting the Sanatana Dharma, Vedika Dharma, involved in conversion and so other things in Bharata, right? Because again, when we talk about conversion is nothing but deviating from Vedika Marga, right? Following the path of Vedic Vedas, respecting the Vedas and following the Vedas, what's said in the Vedas. Even a small ounce of doubt arising in the mind about the Vedas and teaching, and the teachings of the Vedas itself, we can call it as conversion. Because the first thing as a Sanatana Dharma follower and Sanatani, our duty is to say that respect Veda at any cost. Okay? Oh, I don't like this said in Manusmriti. That's wrong. What Manusmriti says, and that is nothing different. What Manusmriti says, Manusmriti is nothing different in other Dharma Shastras, Puranas, or even Mahabharata or Ramayana, Vedas, Upanishads, or Bhagavad Gita. Wherever you go, it's all message is consistent. Manusmriti is not suddenly making up something. Okay, it's same. For example, if you go to Vasishta Parashara Smriti, Vasishta, any other Smritis, right? It says the same thing, how one should live, Dharma Shastras. So they do not create the class hierarchy. They do not create this caste hierarchy. They do not neglect women. Instead, they say how one should live to in this path of Karma Yoga, how one should live and what it leads to. Right? We looked at Karma Yoga previously, saying that you should perform karmas, your own karmas, Swadharma. And what is that Swadharma? That's what's said in the Manusmritis. And Manusmriti is quoted in all the Puranas. It's quoted in Mahabharata many, many times. We looked at many times, right? Manu said this, Manu said this, Manu said this. What is Manu said this? Manu said this means Manusmriti says this. It's recorded in the Manusmritis. Manu said this, whatever Manu said is recorded as Manusmriti. So these Smritis, they tell us how one should live, one should conduct. What is the achara? What is the duties? What is the responsibility? What is the path to moksha? Isn't that what Gita says? So if you are saying Manusmriti is wrong, everything is wrong. Now, yes, Manusmriti or Mahabharata or Gita or other systems, they do mention about duties specific to the four varnas and ashramas. It says, okay, this is your duty, this is how you should live. And it also describes, for example, Manusmriti or even Mahabharata, Puranas, everything describes. Okay, in some cases it might say that you will be punished in hell, or sometimes it says that you should punish here. Okay, it's for example a king's duty should punish these type of people with these kind of punishments. Okay, these kind of actions will deserve this kind of punishments. That's what Manusmriti and Dharma Shastras say. So it describes punishments for those deviating from those things. Because here, again, it is king's policy that's explained. It is the legal code of conduct, right? So it explains what happens if you break those things. So let's take one example. For example, Manusmriti says that molten should be poured into the ears of the Shudras who listen to the Vedas or who chant, and should be poured into their throat and things like that. Now, those who oppose Manusmriti, who read only that one particular line, passage, or got it through some forwarded message, okay, they probably would not have read it, because if they have read it, they would have read the next two lines as well, next chapter as well. They would have learned by then. They probably got it from a WhatsApp or Facebook or some other forwarded message, and that's how this whole thing started. So they probably looked at it and said, this is harsh. Shudra listening to Vedas should be punished. The context here is important. It is said while describing who is eligible to study the Vedas, who is studying Vedas, who benefits from it, right? So it's explaining, while explaining that Shudras are ineligible. While saying Shudras ineligible, it is described it as a punishment. If one still goes and listens to actively to those Vedic chanting, he's with the intention of learning, then it is punishable. If it is only that Shudra listens to Vedas and he should be punished, then everybody should be punished, right? Even in Mahabharata, we see many times stories where sacrifices happen. Shudras were actively in that perimeters. So definitely they would have heard the mantras, Vedic mantras. For example, Vidura, we see in Yudhishthira's Rajasuya sacrifice, we see that Vidura was helping everybody, right? He wasn't barred, he wasn't kept a few miles away from the sacrifice. And Vidura repeatedly says, I am a Shudra, right? So if he is like that, why he was there? It is not that. Vidura never tried to act like a Brahmana or learn Vedas. And in Ramayana as well, we see the same example. Rama, with the Uttarakhanda, we see that Rama goes and punishes Shambhuka for similar offense with Shudra doing a penance. He goes and kills him. Right? That is in line with what Manu says as a king should perform. Only when one violates those code of conduct that's said, then only the punishment. It is not that everybody listening randomly by accident, or even if one happens to be there and puja is happening, it's not that everybody should punish those things, those people. It is, the context is important. If one studies Manusmritis, they will find that every shloka about Shudra's punishment, there are dozen similar things for Brahmanas as well. For example, Brahmana drinking alcohol. It says that one should pour boiling ghee or sometimes boiling cow urine and things like that. Those things are mentioned in Dharma Shastras. Drinking alcohol. Brahmana missing Sandhyavana, you should do those kind of fasting and these kind of things. It is not just that one class is said that the punishments. It is again, punishments are why they are there. They are to say that this is wrong path, don't go there. It is not to punish somebody. It is to say that you should not even think about doing those kind of things. And same goes for women as well. So the Manusmriti is against women, it discriminates and all those kind of things. Smriti talks so much respect for women and also punishment for those who are adulterers and so on. So Manusmriti is not in favor of one class of people or against another. It is how a society which has moksha as ultimate goal should strive to live. That's what Manusmriti or other Smritis or our Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata, Ramayana, Purana, all of them teach. If at all Manu is such a horrible person and the Manusmriti is, why is Bhagavan saying in this shloka, and the Acharyas, Madhusudan Saraswati, Sri Madhusudan Saraswati or Shankaracharyas or others here explained in this shloka, for example, saying that Bhagavan is saying in this shloka that science, that yoga is imparted from him to Vivaswan and then to Manu. So if Manu is such a person, why there is important? Why he was taught all those things? So Bhagavan's teaching reached Manu, the Vedas, this teached, and Manu's laws are Manusmriti. People are burning Manusmriti, then they aren't burning Gita, which is Vedic teaching. So they're burning the Vedas, right? We hear about Manu everywhere in our Shastras. Lalita Sahasranama says Manu Vidya, right? Manu was one of the worshippers of the Devis, so he is the Lalita Upasaka. The Vishnu Sahasranama, Narayana himself says Manu. Bhagavata Purana explains that Manu is Vishnu's avatar, Vishnu's Amsha. Gita himself again, Bhagavan says when his Vibhuti is explaining, I am Manu. So if that Manu's teachings are not something we can listen, follow, then we are not following the Vedika Marga. And one thing also we need to remember that hating, discrediting, disparaging, abusing the Vedas or association with those who do so, and also not doing anything when someone does it, all these are equivalent to Mahapatakas, grievous, heinous sins like Brahmahatya. They are all equal. Even association with such people, so not condemning those people. Hence, it is simply sitting saying, I am not involved in this Manusmriti burning is not an option for any of Vedika Dharma followers. If someone says something horrible about Manusmriti with a vendetta, without knowing if someone says, educate them. But if it is somebody saying with a clear intention of harming, that's not acceptable. Now, coming back to Bhagavan, Bhagavan continues to explain how this knowledge was passed on and what has happened in this time. Okay, so because we looked at that it was passed from Manu to Ikshvaku, and from Ikshvaku, what happened? Evam parampara praptamimam rajarshiyo viduh sa kaleneha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa. The royal sages, the Rajarshis, knew this yoga, which was received thus in regular succession. That yoga, O Parantapa, is now lost owing to long lapse of time. Evam means thus, Parampara means in continuous tradition, Praptam means received, Evam means this, that is this yoga, Rajarshiyoho means the Raja Rishis, Viduhu means understood, Saha means that, Kalena means with the long passage of time, Iha means in this world, Mahata means great, Yoga means the science of yoga. This yoga we were talking about, Nashtaha means lost, Parantapa means addressing Arjuna here, this scorcher of enemies. So, Acharya in his Bhashya explains that Raja Rishis, Rajanascha te Rishescha Rajarsheha. So the king sages, Raja Rishis, those who were kings and sages at the same time. So they were, even though they were kings, they were living like Rishis. Okay, so we looked at previous chapter, Janaka's example was given, right? So like that, those Raja Rishis knew this yoga, which was Evam Parampara Praptam. This yoga, which was received thus through a regular succession of Kshatriyas. So Manu to Ikshvaku and Ikshvaku to his sons, and like that, it Parampara, it continued. So the Raja Rishis, who were the kings and at the sages at the same time, they were the Rishis, they were living like Rishis, for example, Nimi and Maruta, Suhotra, Paurava, Shibi, Dasharati, Rama, Raghu, Harishchandra, Sagara, Bhagirata, Dilipa, Mandatri, Nahusha, Yayati, Ambresha, Shadabindu, Gaya, Rantideva, Bharata, Prithu, Jamadagni, many other we see stories, right, of their life stories and how they lived. Even though they ruled the entire earth, they lived like rishis who endowed, they had the entire earth under their control, but they continued to live like rishis. Those Raja Rishis knew this yoga, which was taught by their own fathers and others, which was thus received through regular succession of teachers and students, beginning from Surya himself. Hence, on account of having eternal Veda as its source, on account of having an inexhaustible fruit, and on account of having received through beginless chain of teachers and students, there is no scope for doubt of this being spurious. So, if there was something in the mind saying, okay, the last two chapters, what I heard, probably just somebody talking about something. Okay? It is not that, because it is parampara praptam. It is received through succession of teachers and students, this Vedic teaching. That's why it is not something that just made up in that battlefield by Krishna. Therefore, this yoga is of great efficacy. In this way, this yoga is being praised for generating abundant faith in it. That's what Bhagavan is doing here. And that yoga, Saha Yoga, that yoga, Nashtaha, is lost, has go its traditional line snapped, and now Mahata Kalena, moving to long lapse of time. In that long lapse of time, this yoga is lost. And he addresses Arjuna as Parantapa. Para are meant that those are against oneself, and he who is like Surya, Bhanuriti, Tapayati iti Parantapa, Shatrutaparam. That's what Bhagavan Acharya explains here, Bhagavad Pada explains. So he is like Surya, he scorches, he tapayati them by the rays of the heat of his prowess, is Parantapa. So he is that scorcher of his enemies. So through the lapse of time, which deteriorates virtue, that yoga, even though possessed of such great utility, is now at the time of our conversation. That's what Bhagavan says, at the time of this Dwapara Yuga, lost, has become deprived of its traditional link, being overpowered by passion, anger, and so on, as a result of its having come down to persons who are weak and have not conquered their organs or senses and are incompetent. Because of that, it's lost. And Bhagavan says that since they failed, because of that, they failed to reach the human goal in the absence of that yoga. And that's why Bhagavan laments here. And he addresses Arjuna as Parantapa. And because Arjuna, again, not just enemies, he controlled his organs and senses as well. If you remember, when Arjuna went to Devaloka, Urvashi asks him, right? So, but he rejects Urvashi. Even though she is a Apsara, he rejects her. He is having control over his senses. So that's why he's called as Parantapa as well. Not just in the battlefield, he had full control over his senses. And we see that many times in Mahabharata as well. Arjuna is described as the one who controls his speech, his thinking, his actions, everything he's fully, and he's never done anything wrong. Such a person is Arjuna. So Bhagavan is explaining, I am explaining this because you are the one who is worthy of receiving it. And noticing that yoga has lost by reaching the people who are weak and have no control of their organs or senses, and the world has become associated with goals that do not lead to moksha. Bhagavan, in the next shloka, he explains, in the third shloka, he explains that sa evayam maya te adya yoga prokta puratana bhaktosi me saka cheti rahasyam hetaduttamam. So that the ancient yoga itself, which is this, has been taught to you by me today, considering that you are my devotee and friend. And for this yoga because this yoga is a profound secret. That's what Bhagavan says. So Saha means that, Eva means certainly, Ayam means this, Maya means by me, Te means unto you, Adya means today, Yoga means this yoga, Prokta means reveal, Puratana means ancient, Bhakta means devotee, Asi means you are, Me means my, Saka means friend, Cha means and, Iti means therefore, Rahasyam means secret, He means certainly, Etat means this, Uttamam means supreme. So that's Pratipadartha. Now, if you look at Acharya's Bhashya, so here Bhagavan starts explaining about the divine incarnations. He explains that ancient yoga itself, which is this, has been taught to you by me today, considering that you are my devotee and friend. Because this yoga, that is this knowledge, is profound secret. So what Bhagavan says, again, that ancient yoga itself, which is this, which has come down through a beginless succession of teachers and disciples, which though inculcated or earlier lost its traditional link in this way in the absence of competent persons, without which highest human goal moksha cannot be achieved, that has been taught to you, but not to anybody else today, at a time when the traditional link is about to get lost. I'm teaching you this it is taught to you by me, who am very affectionate. Why it's taught? Because you are my bhakta and saka. The word again, iti, is used in the sense of because here. So why he is saka? Why he is friend? Why he is bhakta? So Bhagavan says that Arjuna is his bhakta, Arjuna is his friend. Where do we see this? So it's Gita itself. We see earlier, right? Second chapter beginning where Arjuna clearly says that I am your student, teach me, I am your. And then we see multiple times in Bhagavad Gita, in Mahabharata, where Arjuna says, I am this strong, I am that strong, I can do all these things, but I will do all these things with your blessings. Krishna, with you, by my side, I will do everything, right? Even these divine weapons and everything I attain, all this through your blessings, your things. And similarly, Krishna also repeatedly says in Mahabharata that we see that he is saying that Arjuna is my friend and nobody else is important to me than Arjuna. He says that nahi dara na mitrani jnatayo na cha bandavaha kaschin nanya priyatara kunti putran mama Arjuna. So nor my wives, friends, the children, bandava, relatives, none of them are my dear to me than Arjuna. That's what Krishna says. And he also says, yastam dveshti samam dveshti yastam anusamam anu iti sankalpetam bhadva sharirardhan mama Arjuna. So those who hate Arjuna, they hate me. Those who hate me, they hate Arjuna. Arjuna is my half body. He is like my other half of my body. So that's what Krishna says. So such a friend, such a devotee, I am telling you this. And Bhagavan says, the idea is, again, is since you are my devotee, by virtue of being very loving at the same time that you have taken refuge in me, and you are my friend, being the same age and affectionate companion, therefore, it is taught to you. And why it is not taught to everybody else? Why you have not told this to everybody else? Bhagavan says, Etat Uttamam Rahasyam. This knowledge is a profound secret. That's why I'm not going to just tell everybody. Again, there is a teaching here that those important things we should pick whom you should teach. Okay, so this is why important where a guru selects a shishya, he has to look at whom what should be taught. So not everybody gives all the mantra upadesha and all the upadeshas to everybody, right? So now Bhagavan starts explaining about his divine incarnations. In case someone should understand that Bhagavan has said something contradictory, therefore, in order to prevent that doubt, as though raising a question, Arjuna asks an objection. Okay, again, for eliminating the doubt of the fools that fools entertain about Bhagavan Vasudeva's being omniscient or non-eternal on account of his being a human being, Arjuna raises the question by restating that view. Okay, so here we see Arjuna asking the question, but again we looked at very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Acharya explaining, Bhagavad Pada explaining us that here we see Arjuna is used as a medium, but it is all of us, Arjunas. Okay, because we don't trust that Bhagavan is saying, I told this to Vivaswan, I told this to, okay, and Vivaswan told this to Manu, Manu told this to Ikshvaku, all this I told. Okay, that's what Bhagavan is saying. And we don't believe this, right? Because we see Krishna as just a human being. He was born in that prison, he was taken away to Nanda Gokula, and then all these things. How could have he told Surya? Our foolish brain work like that. And the question that's coming in our mind is what's been put through the medium of Arjuna here, so we all can benefit. Okay, so the shloka, the fourth shloka goes here. Aparam Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvatah katameta dvijaniyam tvamado proktavaniti. Arjuna says, your birth was later, whereas the birth was Surya was earlier. How am I to understand this that you instructed him in the beginning? Very good question. Arjuna says, Arjuna uvacha, Arjuna said, aparam means later, bhavata means your, janma means birth, param means prior, janma means birth, vivasvata means vivaswan, Surya, katam means how, etat means this, vijaniyam means I am to understand, tvam means you, ado means in the beginning, proktavan means taught, iti means thus. Whatever we are looking at this, that's what taught here. So Acharya explains this as your birth was later in the home of Vasudeva or in the prison, whereas the birth of Surya was param, earlier, in the beginning of the creation. Therefore, how I am to understand this is not inconsistent. How I am to understand this? As this is not inconsistent, that you yourself who instructed this yoga in the beginning are the same person who are now teaching me. How I am to understand that you are the same person who told Surya previously is now teaching me? Your birth, this embodiment in the house of Vasudeva, is recent time, of present age, of this yuga. It is of the lower grade because being a human being. And the birth of Surya is remote time, in the olden time, at the time of creation, which occurred at the beginning of the creation. And it is a superior grade because of being divine. Right? So there is two issues we see. One is the timing. Okay. Surya was very at the beginning of the creation. You are just now, I've seen you, okay, walking, okay, trying to walk. I've seen you that. Okay, that's what our elders said, right? That's what like. So Krishna, I've seen you, you're just about 5,000 years old. Right? People say this place. Krishna is about just 5,000 years old, Krishna was born. No. Okay. Then the second problem is you are a human being, but Surya is Bhagavan, right? He is divine. So how can you say that that's been happened? And since the birthlessness of the Atma, which was discussed earlier, therefore Arjuna's question is only in relation to the birth of this body here. Hence, he asks, how I am to understand this, that is, as non-contradictory in import. He explains the meaning of the very word. etatidi, that you instructed him in the beginning. How I'm to understand that? The idea is, this is contradicting that you, who are a human being of recent time and are non-omniscient, spoke at the beginning of the creation to the Surya, who is earlier and omniscient. How I'm to understand this? Again, the meaning in a nutshell here is, as you are not delimited by this body, so was your teachership with regard to Surya through a limitation by another body, or was it through this present body? If it is the former case, inadmissible, because that former case, you can't say that, okay? If you are not limited by this body and it's the same person, you were there when at the beginning of creation and now you are, that's not possible, because what has been experienced in the other lives cannot be recollected by one who is not omniscient, right? So you can't say that, I did that in the previous life, okay, I did that at that time. You can't say that unless you have that memory. Otherwise, there comes a possibility of remembering experience of the past lives even by me. Okay, if you are remembering, I also should remember, right? What I did at the beginning of the creation. Because as human beings, there is no distinction between you and me as regards to remembering and omniscience, right? So we don't have that non-omniscience. We don't have that difference between you and me. And also, it has been said by the learned people, for example, in the Jaime Tantra and things like that, it doesn't, what's experienced in the other lives is not recollected. That's what when said. So even this second view also is not possible, because non-existence of the present body in the beginning. Okay, if you think that, okay, first of all, there is two options. One is either you sat there and then now you still remember it in this body. That's one option. That's not possible, because we don't remember. We are all humans. We forget everything what happened in the previous lives. The second option is you said in the same body at the beginning of creation. Now you are saying again. That's also not possible. Okay. That's also not possible, because this body was not there at the beginning of the creation. Okay. So it was not there. So that's also not there. So that being the case, although it is possible that you existed in another body at the beginning of the creation, there is no possibility of remembering that now. Even if it is possible to remember that now through this body, it is not possible that it existed in the beginning of the creation. Okay. So there is two parts. One is remembering, another one is the body. So either the body was not there, body was there then and here, but you can't remember. Okay. So if it is possible to remember what has gone through, the body is got a new body now. So that's not possible. So that's what the question's coming here. So there are two objections, Arjuna, here on the grounds of omniscience and non-eternality. So, and to that, Bhagavan explains the first objection on the ground of his omniscience. He explains that by the way of demolishing the doubts of these fools, using Arjuna as an example here, but it is addressing us with regard to Bhagavan Vasudeva, that he has no omnipotent Anishvara and omniscience, Sarvajñatva, to which very purpose was Arjuna's question. Bhagavan says in the next shloka, he explains, he says that Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Bahuni me vetitani janmani tavacha Arjuna, tanyaham veda sarvani nattam veta parantapa. Bhagavan says, O Arjuna, many lives of mine have been passed, and so have yours. I know them all, but you know not. O Parantapa. He explains, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha means Sri Bhagavan said, Bahuni means many, me means of mine, Vyatitani means have passed. Janmani means births. Tava means of yours. Cha means and. Arjuna means are addressing Arjuna. Tani means them. Aham means I. Veda means no. Sarvani means all. Na means not. Tvam means you. Veta means no. Parantapa is addressing Arjuna, and we looked at the Parantapa meaning previously. So that's the Pratipadartha. We'll look at Acharya's Bhashya on this and the details of this next time when we gather.